Here's Henry Hub. This is our primary natural gas pricing matrix. Here are hurricanes. We used to get a lot of our natural gas in the United States from the Gulf, and every time a storm would come through, we'd have to spend months repairing the damage. By the time we got to 2009, the majority of natural gas produced in the United States came from shale fields, and every single shale well is onshore, so we just don't care anymore. Here's a price spike that we had last January 2021. This is what happened when a cold snap hit Texas. I mean, it got down to -5. Can you imagine the carnage? Yeah, everything stopped. Coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind, solar, oh my God, the Texans do not deal well with cold. It's like, I'm actually in Texas right now. It's 32 degrees today. It's silly. Now this is what we're all wrestling with in North America at the moment. We hit $9 last month. We're at about $6.50 right now. We have only $9 is the inflation adjusted 50-year average, and we are losing our minds. You guys want to see what the Asians and the Europeans are dealing with? Europe's already in recession. Germany's probably not going to pull out of this one. The price disconnect and what it's doing to the entire industrial base is catastrophic, and there's no way out of it. So in North America, we need to massively expand our industrial base simply to cover the shortages in product that we're going to have as the European system goes offline. Canada and the United States have very different approaches to the steel sector. Canada is much more typical. So Canada, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, China, India, Brazil, you guys all do it the same way. You treat steel as a national security issue. So once you get the iron ore, whether you produce it yourself or you import it, you throw it into a blast furnace with some coal, you get an intermediate product called pig iron, and then you process that on into rolled steel of various types. You keep it all in-house. That's not what we do in the United States. In the United States, we've kind of skipped those first couple of steps. We do a lot of steel recycling. We're the world's best. But if we want new steel, we just import the pig iron from someone else and then process it on. Well, 75% of global pig iron comes from two places, Russia and Ukraine. The Russian stuff is under sanction. The Ukrainian stuff was powered by a certain nuclear power plant you may have heard about that is offline. So our imports from those two countries have gone to zero, and we're seeing the impact on pricing. The single biggest input that we need for the steel sector, the single biggest sector that we use steel for in terms of volume, construction, energy, primarily for pipelines. So we have a bit of a pickle here, and we're trying to buy it from anywhere we can, and it's contributing to our inflation matrix. Okay, enough about everybody else. Let's talk about you in the context of where those shortages are going to be. Green tech is sexy for two reasons. Number one, it raises the possibility of actually getting our carbon emissions under control. But for a national security guy like me, there's a second argument here. And if you can separate yourself from the energy producing countries that have proven problematic, then maybe, just maybe, we can have a safer world and safer countries. The problem is that the technologies in its current form really don't help us get there because they come from a lot more places. Yes, you don't need fuel, but the materials that you need in order to drive that system require an order of magnitude more materials and an order of magnitude different materials. So on the top, you've got the material inputs that go to your standard electric vehicle today versus your standard conventional car. And it's the same for power generation. Remember that when you're dealing with fossil fuels, the fuel is the medium. You basically burn it, you capture the thermal energy, that's what makes a vehicle go. But if you're going to do EV, you're dealing with electricity. Electricity has to be stored and conducted, and that means you need a lot more of things like copper and zinc. Here's the problem. These four materials, Russia is a global top 3 supplier. These we were going to need at least 3, probably 5 times as much as we had before if we really were going to electrify transport and green the grid. We can't have globally accessible fossil fuels that are affordable without the Russians. And we certainly can't do the green transition without them. That doesn't mean that no one can do it. It just means that some of the biggest suppliers of the things we think we have to make this work are going away. And that provides a lot of interesting opportunities for anyone else who can bring stuff to the market. And that would be Manitoba. On the left, you've got the copper zinc group. Those red dots, based on their shape, they're either places that you are already producing or know that you've got stuff you could go back to and open a new mine. I'll underline again, you have not looked in the muskeg. You have not looked on the shield. You have not looked in Northeast. You need to, because you undoubtedly have more there than what you know about already. But just what you know about, if we're talking about the price of zinc going and copper going up by at least a factor of 2 or 3, it's worth going after in a very, very big way as quickly as you can, because we're going to lose most of the Russian stuff within a year or two. Now, the next one on the right, that's nickel. Nickel is another material that is absolutely critical for construction. We use it in stainless steel. So your average stainless steel is maybe 80% iron ore and about 20% nickel. And the Russian system is the third largest source of nickel in the world and the second largest source of processed nickel along with processed copper. So there's your locations. And once again, you undoubtedly have more under the shield, under the muskeg. But before you're like, running out there and thinking, okay, we need to do this at scale, which from a financial point of view and economic point of view is a reasonable conclusion. You have to keep in mind of what mining looks like at scale in the permafrost. This is the Russian city of Norilsk. It's in north-central Siberia. It's in their equivalent of the muskeg, although they obviously call it something different. Okay, cool. This is uranium, specifically raw uranium ore. These are the world's 10 largest exporters. The United States is not on this graphic because we classify that information, but we'd probably be on here somewhere too. Now, obviously, Kazakhstan is far and away in the top slot. You guys are in number 2. The Australians are in number 3. Both the Kazakhs and the Australians are rapidly expanding their own raw uranium production. You guys are falling down. And if we are concerned about the stability of oil and gas, either from a carbon point of view or an energy security point of view, it'd probably be part of the solution, right? Well, it's not just about the raw stuff, it's about the processing. And the majority of what the Kazakhs export goes to Russia, where it is processed into fuel rods, with most of the work done by Westerners. So even though this is not under sanction, we should expect significant reductions in the output of uranium-based power fuel on a global basis in the next couple of years. So, if you feel like nukes are okay, this can absolutely be part of your story, because this is some seriously low-hanging fruit. The world already had a shortage of uranium fuel production and processing and uranium raw production already before all of this started. And now we're looking at a catastrophic loss in the number 1 global supplier. Gold. Gold is Russia is technically the world's number 3 supplier, but that ignores a couple of things. Number 1, the Russians have been using gold in the billions for years to manipulate events near and far, because it's largely untraceable. So whenever you see reports of Russian mercenaries operating anywhere, they'll probably be paying in gold, and they're probably bribing the local governments in gold. That's not in the data. Second, Russia maintains a massive state stockpile separate from their currency reserves. That too is a state secret, and that is not in the data. Third, Russia maintains a stockpile of mined gold ore that has not fully been purified, so they can get more into their system in a heartbeat if they want to. That's also not in the data. And now that Russia is under severe financial sanctions, what they've been doing is loading up gold ingots onto planes and flying them to countries that they want to buy stuff from. That's probably where they're getting the Iranian drones, for example. Just paying for everything in gold. So the amount of gold that has been expended is high. And the Russians have found it to be really their only reliable method of exchange, which means we should expect, since it's being used, that the supply of gold writ large is going to go down by quite a bit because the Russians unofficially are by far the world's largest producer and user of the stuff. Now, the Russians can produce gold without outside help. I mean, this is for the most part early 1900s technology.